Thanks for joining this evening. Today we're going to run through our P6-Scrubber, and I'm going to do the lead-in. I'm Nicole Darden. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald Associates. And with me today doing the heavy lifting, she's been doing a lot of P6-Scrubber today, Sue Hopkins. She's joining from Wyoming. I am going to record the webinar, and we'll share it as long as everything goes well. So let's jump right in. Let's give you some understanding, some background as to why we built our P6-Scrubber. So P6-Scrubber is trying to address some common struggles that we all face when we've got a P6 environment that we're importing into. However, this tool is also an excellent tool if you're a contractor and you want to pre-scrub the files that you want to give to your consultant or your client, okay? Because you may well have things that you don't need to give them, like resources and whatnot, okay? So it's not only for keeping your database clean, but it could also be used very successfully on cleaning a file prior to handing it over to an owner or a consultant to critique. So, we have these struggles because we're importing XERs or XMLs, XLM, sorry, can't think tonight. So we can import both, and Sue will show you that. Now, when you do that importing, it's often a problem that you start to get data into your database that you don't want. Extra codes, extra user-defined fields, possibly extra OBSs and other things that you do not want in your system. So that's a struggle because you can't always keep those out with the regular settings in P6. And you may have specific things that you've asked to be provided in your schedule development. So you want to make sure that you're getting those specific things. So that's also a struggle. And just making sure that you don't have any collisions, clashing of data, calendars, things like that. You definitely don't want them to be overwriting, things of that nature. So these are the struggles that we run into with the out-of-the-box configuration in P6 and the handling of importing. So I'm going to ask one quick question. How do you deal with P6 projects from outside your company? Just a quick poll and just to get an idea of some of the different ways that you're dealing with it. So we've got clients who have a separate database. They bring the projects into that database. They clean it up. I've seen some open up the XER and start manually modifying the file. Okay, that's very dangerous and it can void your warranty. So that's not a great idea, but I have seen it done. And then some people just import it and then just starts cleaning it up. Okay, so this can be very time consuming. So a few people answered, so I'll go ahead and share. This can be very time consuming. And that's one of the reasons that we built the Scrubber, because we have some very large clients that we deal with. And rather than pay us to keep maintaining their database, we thought, let's get a tool out there to help them take care of the database prior and by themselves, okay, without having to be a super user necessarily. So let's just ask the next quick question, then I'm going to turn it over to Sue, and she's going to jump in and show us how it works. How much time do you think that you spend each month cleaning up imports? Now, this is going to vary widely. So we have some clients that bring in over 100 projects every month. They do twice a month updates, and they've got over 50 projects. So, it can be a very, very large number of hours if you have a lot of imports. And if you don't do as many, of course, it's going to be a little less. Okay, so I'll share, not everyone voted, but that's fine. So it can vary widely. So the idea here is to try and make this easier and make sure that you're saving time and keeping the database nice and tidy and making sure you're not providing data that you don't need to. If you're a contractor, you can use the tool to take things out very consistently for a certain client requirement and feed them that file in a nice, clean, repetitious manner. Okay, keeping all your extra coding that you might need in your P6 nice and clean without having to copy and paste and make a new project and all those steps that you might take if you're on the contractor side. So how does it work? So it's pretty easy. It's a pretty simple tool to learn. Sue did some coaching today and a 2-hour session, more than adequate to get a bunch of definitions set up with a large group. So very easy to learn. You basically have an import file that you're going to scrub. You select the file and you select the definition. So the definition is where you set up all the things you want to do when a file comes in from, let's say, contractor A. Okay. And that definition can be saved, so it's reusable, so you don't have to redo the work every time, and it checks a variety of things. So the first thing it does, it cleans up automatically the POBS and risk types, which in the last version or so, I think Oracle has it all sorted out, but older versions still have those straggler problems. You can also check calendars and roll them down and make sure you don't have any collisions on calendars, which is super important. You can check the basics that are always the problem, the user-defined fields, the codes, cost codes if you use cost codes, and that's at all the levels, okay? And Sue will run through that. It's not just at the activity level. We're going to deal with project, resource, and roles as well. And then we've also got validations. So we have specific validations that you can monitor, such as project ID, naming, structure, and so on. If you have rules that you're expecting them to follow, you can validate that and have it already in the definition. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Sue. She's going to do the deep dive and show us exactly how the software works. Now, if you have questions as we walk through, feel free to put them into the question area, and I will try and tackle them as she's presenting. And if it makes sense for her to show something specific, she'll be able to do that as well. I handed it over to you, Sue.
Okay, thank you very much. So P6-Scrubber can be deployed in with several different options. There is an option where it can be attached to your database so that you can see what already exists in your database and compare what is coming in an XCR to what is already in your database. Or we can deploy a standalone version which would not be connected, and you would just simply build out all of the definitions with that standalone type of deployment. Now, I'm going to use the live version so that you can see how we can connect to a database and compare. So I'm just going to sign in here and come to our front page here. Now you can see on the left that we have different modules, different areas, if you will, where you can scrub different types of data. So I'm just going to open these all up. And you can see that at the project level, we have our ID name, which is that comparison that we were talking, or that Nicole was talking about, as well as codes and UDFs. And those are available with both projects and activities. We also have resources where we can remap them, resource codes and user-defined fields, as well as units of measure, and then handling our calendars, as well as roles, cost accounts, assigning responsible manager upon import. And then we have an area here that is if you just need to do a very quick scrub and want to set things up quickly in that respect. So as you're building out, a lot of these look very much the same. Each one is going to have a toggle where you enable the validation and decide essentially what you're going to be doing with it. Let me start out first with our comparisons for our ID names as well, or our ID pattern as well as our name pattern. So, in a lot of cases, if you have specifications that either your contractor has been given in how they define their project ID with a particular pattern, or perhaps how they name their their project, you can set P6-Scrubber to validate that, to make sure that what you have specified is being adhered to. Now, this is also available at the activities level as well. So if there are specifications for activity ID and name, you can also define that there. Now, if you're going to define a pattern, and I'm just going to pick this project ID pattern, you have some basics that you can define, contains, starts with, ends with, or you can build out more complex patterns. I'm going to look at the simple pattern because this is one of the easiest ways to build out a pattern. Now, when you select the simple pattern and you click in the field, you can see that you've got options of what you can say you're expecting. So, what I'm expecting, what I've specified for my contractors is that I want to see uppercase letters, and I want to see there should be two of them to begin with. So then I can save that. Um, After those two uppercase letters, I need to see five numbers. So I'm going to say I need to see any number, and there should be five of them. And then I can apply that. Now, after that, I need to see a dash. So I'm going to do specific text and put that dash in there. And after that, it could be any number of characters uh, that could be changing. So I can then say, all right, then I can have any character. I don't know, it can be any number of characters. So I set 0 to say there's unlimited characters that can follow, and then apply. So that's the basics um, of my pattern here. I also have a box here over on the right that is going to allow me to test my pattern to make sure that what I've defined is actually um, doing what I expect it to. Right now, there's nothing in there, so it's giving me a red box indicating that it doesn't match. Now, if I were to put in um, a valid pattern or a valid ID, I could now see that the way that I have this defined is actually working, and it's giving me a green to show me that. Now I'm going to hop on down to my activity codes here. Codes, whether no matter which level they're at, whether they're project or resources, work similarly. The difference with activity codes is that we can since they can reside at either the global or the project level, we we've built that in here. So if I'm starting from scratch and I'm making um, a new definition, and this is what I would be doing if I did not uh, have this hooked up or import a file to help me, and I'll show that import later. I can just start adding. So might have a code type name. And let's say that type name is vendor. It is a global code. And as I'm going, it's kind of coaching me on what I need to look at next. So it's telling me an action must be selected. What do I want to do with this global vendor code? So in my action, I can choose to scrub it out, remove it, or keep it. Well, in my case, I do want to keep it. And since I am hooked up to a database, I can actually go in here and I can take a look and find. my vendor code that it matches, and it's going to let me know that it matches at this point. Now, if I wanted to, if this code was coming in at the global level in my project, I could also choose to roll that code down to the project level. Now, when I select this, what it's going to do is it's going to, if I had perhaps several projects in this one XER, it would only roll this code down to the project that it is associated with. So it's not going to roll it down to every single project. It'll only take it to the one that it's actually associated with. But I could choose to roll that down. I'm not going to do that right now. How now, of course, with our codes, we have dictionaries. So if I were to open up this little plus sign underneath my or near my vendor, I now have the area where I can see my dictionary. Now I could add my values one by one and do that manually if I wanted to, but I can also use the functionality of a bulk edit on here. Now, if I open up this bulk edit, it gives me a place to paste in my values. So perhaps it's on maybe a spreadsheet, or even better, it's in actually my database. So if I go to my database and I were to go to my activity codes and I'm looking for that vendor, and I'm actually going to just filter by all, I could go and I could highlight all of these values in my dictionary in P6. I can copy that and then go back to P6-Scrubber and paste it into this bulk edit. So this is going to give me all of my values that I have defined for my vendor code type. Now, when I copy it and paste it from P6, it gives me a header row. So I've chosen to remove that first row. It's not going to bring that in as values. I also can see that not only do I have my code value and my description, but I also have that color in there. And I don't need the color, so I can tell it I want to remove that color. Then I can apply, and it's going to put them all in here. Again, it's going to let me know, what do I need to do? I need to select an action so that I can keep these. Now, I could go along and do all these, but I'm not going to waste your time by watching me do that. Now, another thing that I can do is in my value here, I can map it and I can say, okay, yes, this is what's in my database. I do have bird in my database, and my description is bird paving. So once I have that all set, it's going to tell me it matches P6. Now, in a case where maybe I was going to do a different one and I wanted to rename it, let's say, but that value is not in my database. I could put this in here and I'll see that it tells me it doesn't match, but I want to allow it to create it. So what I can do is on that red X, I can click and I can acknowledge that I know it's not in my database and that I am actually going to allow it to come in. And that's going to mark it with a red or a blue star so that the scrubber knows that I'm going to allow those to come in. Now at both levels, whether it be at the code type level or at the dictionary level, I can choose that if a value comes in that does not match what I have defined, I can choose to just simply scrub that out if that's what I want. Or if I leave this blank, it's going to, if I don't check mark it, it's going to allow new values to come in as well. Now I can also say, okay, I'm going to allow new dictionary values, but I'm not going to allow any more code type names that come in. So I can check mark that, and it's going to remove any that are not defined. Now, I can go through and I could set all of these things, from scratch, and create my definition. However, what I actually want to do is I have a file to import, and I want to base my definition on what that file contains. So I'm just going to go ahead and first of all, I'm going to just blank out the information that I've already put in there by saying I want a new definition. And that's going to remove all of those changes I just made as I went through. Now I'm going to import a file that I have received. So when I grab that file and tell it to import, P6-Scrubber is going to go out and it's going to it's going to read all of those values that are contained within this file. So when I apply it, I can see I've got these values that are coming in and whether they match or not and things of that. So let's start out with our project codes. So I'm going to enable this. And I can see if I hover over my district, there's a problem because I do have a triangle there, a yellow triangle. And when I hover over it, it's telling me that, oh, the dictionary value validation has failed. So I can open up my dictionary and I can take a look and say, okay, so I have a value of DIST5 coming in, but that doesn't match what's in my database. So I know that I have that district in there. So I can blank this out and it'll give me the list of values that actually are existing in my database. So it looks like I call that D5. So when I do that, it's going to now say, okay, it's going to map this DIST5 to D5, which matches my database. And then I could go and create the rest of these as well. Now, on UDFs, or user-defined fields, we have the ability to pick and choose which subject areas we want to come in and which ones we don't. So in my database, I don't want any WBS codes to come in. I don't need any of theirs, and I have one that actually came in with my file. So I'm going to tell it I want to scrub that out. And I know that I have a submittal here. I don't want to keep that. I want to scrub that. But on this submittal date, I know that I have something similar to that in my database. So what I can do is I can say I can keep it, but I'm actually going to go and look for what I have it defined as. And mine is submitted date. So I can remap that from submittal date to submitted date.
Yeah, just to make sure you understood, scrubbing means it's going to block it. Okay, it won't
Right.
bring it in
It
at
will
all.
remove it. It will delete it from the XER or
Yeah.
XML as the case may be.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Right. Okay. So again, activities, if I had, if I wanted to roll something down, I can see that I have a code type called mitigations here. And maybe I want to roll that down to my project level. I could, I could click this roll down, and that's going to create it within this project. And then I could go down and deal with the rest of these as well. Now, I guess I should enable that. Now with resources, what I can, and I'm having a scroll issue. Let me refresh here, see if I can get my scroll back.
Sue, so we had a question that came in, and you
Sure.
did just show it, but I thought since you're right on it, let's touch on it.
Okay.
So if an activity code comes in and
Mhm.
it does not match my dictionary, okay, so the two things that we're looking for, we could change the name of the code. That's
Correct.
what Sue just showed you with the submittal date thing. And we can also change the name of the code value. That's what she showed you with the dist5 to the D5. Okay,
Correct.
so we will allow you to remap. That's what we would normally call remapping one code to another and one value to another. So yeah, she's going to show it to you again. Yeah.
Yep. So my dist5 was what came in with my XER. However, in my database, I have that value defined as D5 instead. So it's going to take this dist5 and change it to D5 so that when I import it, it's not going to create a new value in my database. It's actually going to uh, map it and call it D5 instead. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Uh-huh. So on our codes for or on our resources, we have some options that we can do here. First of all, what we can do is we can choose to bring our resources in under a parent that is defined in our database. So I have one here that was used for testing and bringing that parent or bringing these resources in under a parent. So I choose the parent I want it to land in, and that is where these resources will be created. They will be imported under that particular one. Now, I can also remap resources. So in this case, what I want to do is I need to have civil engineering, but I need to have it at a high level. I don't need to have it broken into drafters and the lead engineers and things like that. So what I can do is I can come out and I can start typing, and I could define that I want to remap that to an engineering, um, high level engineering. And I can do the same with all the rest of these as well. So all of my engineering, I'm going to have it come in under that higher level. And then in this case, I want it to be all the same. So I'm essentially remapping these all into one resource so that I can report at that high level resource rather than having this broken down. So I have the availability to do that. Codes and UDFs, user-defined fields, work the same way as they did up at the top. And we also have this idea of cleaning up or not polluting up our units of measure. So a lot of times we already have units of measure that are already defined. And um, another company may define their units of measure differently, but they mean the same thing. So I had one in this XER that the abbreviation was M3 and the name was M3. Well, we don't call it that in our database. It's actually cubic meters, and I do have a match for this one, but it is a capital. And then it's now telling me that the name does not match here either. So I can go and delete this, and it's going to then allow me to remap that name as well. So now it matches what I have in my database, and I'm not creating a new unit of measure that means the same as one that I already have established.
Yeah, for our clients that do a lot of Power BI or Tableau, corporate reporting off the system, the unit of measures, keeping them tidy is super important. So we've got that in there.
Absolutely. Now, in our next section here, we have our calendars and where we can deal with our calendars. So I can see in here that I have global calendars that are defined. Now, the problem that occurs when you import global calendars are when you have a global calendar in your database that is the same name. What will happen is when you import this, if it is at the global level and you have a matching global calendar with that same name, It will take the definition of the imported calendar. So anything that you have, days off, anything like that, that do not match, it's going to overwrite it from that XER and possibly really mess up some of your schedules because now it's changed your calendar. So in a lot of cases, what you would probably want to do is roll that down to the project level. It's still going to maintain that calendar, but instead of potentially affecting your global calendars, it's going to keep it at the project level and still be allowed to use it. Now, I can choose here to roll down those calendars. So I can say I want to roll them down. But later on, I will show you an easier way that I can handle all the calendars that come in at the global level. Um, but in this case, I'm going to handle it right here at this calendar roll down. I'm going to decide which ones, in this case, all of them, and then any extra global calendar that might come in on different XCRs, I want to roll those down as well. Now, in my project area, this is for informational purposes. Um, we had a client who requested that they be able to see what project calendars reside in the project itself. Now, another thing that I could do, if it was appropriate, is I have a 7-day calendar here. And I know that this 7-day calendar is the same one that I have up at my global level. What I could do is I could remap it to that calendar at the project level too. So I could combine that and say that I want them all to be assigned to this Rapley 7-day calendar instead. So I have some options there. So it might be a good reason to actually be able to see those project calendars in there. Now, the last calendar is our resource calendars. So it's going to show what resource calendars are coming in, and you have the ability to, in this case, you have to keep it because it's associated with the calendar. But let's say you already had a resource calendar that you wanted that to be associated with. You could remap it and have it be assigned to the calendar that was already in your database. Now, with roles, roles work the same as resources do. So you have that ability to create a parent in the role category or in the role dictionary and have those roles imported underneath that parent. And then again, go along and uh, correct or decide what you're going to do with all these ones that are listed here. Um, I'm not going to go through and do all these. I do have one that's already set up that we can run it on later. And we can also deal with cost accounts. So if you're using cost accounts in your database, or maybe you're not, and they are coming in, you could choose to scrub them or remap them, if you will, um, the same as our codes and our user defined fields. Now, when you're importing, um, a lot of times you don't want to import to the same responsible manager that is assigned in your project or in your file. So we've given the ability to pull up the um, the OBS structure in your database so that you can select what responsible manager you would like to assign upon when this file is imported into your database. So it's going to allow you to set that at this point. Now, everything I've done up here is great, and it gives me the ability to be very meticulous about each piece of information. We have one more area down here at the bottom that we've called our simple scrub. Now, when I click into my simple scrub, we have some very basic things that you could handle if you don't need to handle each piece of data individually. So things that I can do is I can prefix my projects, my project activity codes, resource codes, role codes, my resource assignment codes. These are all codes that are available now in newer versions. I can prefix my global calendars if I'm going to bring them in. I can do UDFs, resources, and I can remove resource shifts or curves as well as prefix them. The middle column is allowing me to decide in one fell swoop if I'm not going to bring in any of that type of data. So let's say I'm not going to bring in any project codes. I could say do not import there. I could also prefix all of my resources at this point. So if I wanted to put SCR on all of them and prefix them with that, I could do that. I also have a common prefix separator. So if I wanted to put a prefix and make sure that all of those prefixes were followed by a dash, I could put my separator here. And then in the case of my calendars, I could also choose to just roll every calendar down. And that was what I was talking about on my global calendars. A very fast way to roll down all calendars is to come to this simple scrub and simply mark that I want to roll them all down to the project level. So if you don't need to stick handle each one of those codes and you want to, you can either just not import them or you just want to prefix them all, you can do that in this simple scrub area. Now, once you're done defining how you want the P6-Scrubber to handle your XER file, what it wants to scrub out, what you want to remap, etc., you're going to want to you can save that definition. So I can come down to this save and load definitions, and I can tell it to save as. So you can see that I've already saved quite a few other definitions in here. I've got a couple for clients. I've got some parent resource where I'm taking it to a scrubber. I'm doing a version to motion, which I'll show you in just a moment, and some things like that. So I do have some that are already there, but I want to create this as a new one. So I can select Save As, and I can, I'm just going to put my initials on them. And I could put notes. So if I wanted to clarify what this definition was, I could put those notes there and then save.
Yeah, so if you're an owner, you'd probably have the consultant and the project name, or the contractor and the project name. If you're a contractor, you would probably have the client that you're scrubbing the data for in advance. Okay, so the naming convention just helps you know exactly which one you're going to keep reusing. If you're going to be updating every month or every 2 weeks, you'll just reuse that same definition over and over again and amend it as needed. Yeah.
Correct. So once I click apply, it's going to go out and it's going to save that. Oh, and it's telling me I have some errors in here. So what this is telling me, it's not going to save it because I've got to correct some errors that are in the roles module. So I can close this, go back to my roles and see that I have these items that are not being handled. Oops, because these are, I didn't acknowledge that I was going to bring those in. And I suspect I'm going to have other issues as well because I didn't handle every piece of information here. But I'll try again. Okay, so now it is saved successfully. I can tell it's saved and what the definition name is up here at the top. You can see that I have my definition that I just put in, and that is the definition that is now applied in Scrubber. I also have my imported project that I last imported. it's going to give me the name of that. If there are several, it will kind of concatenate those and show you what those are as well. So now I'm ready to scrub a file. Now, I don't want to use this definition. I actually have another definition that is already saved. And so I want to apply that definition so that I can run it on a couple of my XERs. So the way I can do that is I can go back into my save and load definitions. I can choose the definition that I want to load and click load. It's going to go out. It's going to change the definition. You can see my definition name has changed here. And now what I want to do is actually create these. And it looks like I've got some errors here for some reason. What do I have? This is in my roles. Okay. Let me just correct this really quick so that it will do this successfully. Okay. And now I'm going to save this so that it saves that in that definition. So I've saved over the top of what I just had, and then I'm ready to scrub my file. So if I go to scrub files, it's going to pop up and it's going to allow me to browse to where my files are located. Now with this one definition, maybe I want to do several, maybe I want to scrub several different projects or files. I can select the files that I want to scrub, and it's going to line them up for me and then just process them in order. So once I'm ready to process, I select process, and it's going to go down and show me that it's working. Oh, goodness, and I have an error. So it's telling me my child role with ID SCRENG test. I must have messed this up here. I'm just going to go and get these cleaned up a little bit. I think I must have deleted something from my database, so I apologize there.
So the reason that we have the ability to import more than one XER is some of our clients, they have the same definitions for all their projects. So they just stack up the imports during the day and then they just run them all at once. Okay, so that's why we have that option. You don't have to do it that way, but you certainly can. Kind of depends on your environment and the role that you're playing and how the files come in.
Okay, so I was successful now, and now I can view a report. So when I view the report, it's going to open it up into an HTML file, and it's going to give me a summary at the top of what the file that I scrubbed, the definition I used, what date, and it'll give me an accounting at a high level at this summary. Now, if I continue to scroll down, I'm going to see very easily whether a validation had any changes that were involved with it or whether it didn't. So green, no changes were done. Red indicates that there were changes. Now, I'm just going to use this as an example, my project code and my dictionary validation for that code, for those codes. I can see that there were changes made. Now, the gray boxes here are indicating what my definition was set to in my when I saved it. And as I scroll down, the color boxes are showing me what happened with my file. So in my project codes, I can see that my client type, and my district were all kept in there. However, on my district, I had a dictionary value change or be modified. And then I had my type of schedule, which I just scrubbed out. Now, underneath is where my district dictionary is. And it's telling me that dist 5 was remapped to D5, and it's telling me that it's remapped. So you'll get that little more granular information as you go down in this report. Now, if everything looks great, I can download my file that has been scrubbed. If not, I would go back, tweak my definition a bit, resave it and run it again and make sure that it's doing what I wanted it to. Now, when you download results, you click the button and it's going to actually uh, bring you, or it's going to ask you where you want to save that. So I'm just going to save it right here. And it downloads as a zip file. So before I was going, if before I would import this, I would want to extract it in this case, because a lot of times you may have some large files that you're dealing with. So it comes all into a zip file. Now, two files were produced when I scrubbed my XER. I have a new XER um, that is clean. And I can tell that because it's going to give me a date and time that it was actually scrubbed. And I also have a copy of that XML report that we were just taking a look at that had the summary information as well as the more granular information. So if I wanted to, if I were giving feedback to let's say my contractors, that there were certain specifications, there were certain things that I expected to see, I could use this report to either send the whole report back to them or copy and paste pieces of the report that I wanted to give them as feedback, so that they could improve their file and either resubmit it or make sure that they did it next time when they submitted their file to me. Now, once I import, I have a few things that are going on. So I've already imported the files to my P6 database here that I have open. So I have this one here that is the XER that has been scrubbed. Now, when I import it in, it's going to bring in some indicators telling me essentially the same thing that my report is telling me, but in a layout format. It's telling me that my project ID checked out. I had some changes on my project code types, so I have a red X. I had some changes on dictionaries on my project codes, so I have a red X. And then I've got my district 5, which has come in successfully. And it looks like I had some UDFs that were also changed, etc. Now, you can also see that I had a notebook that also came in with this particular load or with this import. And that is actually a copy, again, of that report that we looked at earlier, so that you could keep this with your import. And if you had, claims or anything of that nature that you needed to actually come in and have an accounting of what happened with this schedule, it's all right here in that report. Now, not only can I see these at the project level, but I can also go into my activities level and I can see by activity what happened with that scrub. So my vendors looked really good. They're all green. As I come over to my work type, I have some that came in clean, and it's also warning me that I have some that are missing that I might want to check out. On my discipline, I have it looks like I've created some discipline codes. That's what those red X telling me that those were created, as well as some that are missing, and so on and so forth. I've got my activity user-defined fields that I've got some changes on, as well as my cost accounts came in and they look good. So I can do that on each one of these levels. Now, one other thing I want to show you is that I about those rules and resources and what I had changed. And for this one, I'm going to open my original file and my scrubbed file so that we can do a comparison. as to what it looks like on those roles and resources. So as I come over here, I can see that in my my original file, I had these values, my resource IDs, and in my role IDs, it's not building it out for the full path. But if I come down here, I can see that they were actually modified here. So I can see my engineering CI that came in for all of those more granular ones. And I do have my roles that were modified as well. Now, one more thing that I want to address is that perhaps you don't want to have indicators come in with your project when you import it, or maybe you don't want to have your notebook created. We have allowed for that. By default, it is set to create those. But if I go into this general area here, I can actually choose to toggle them on or off. So maybe I want the notebook, but I don't want the indicators. I can turn that off and it's going to create it without those indicators. Now, another thing I can do is that if I have received a file, or I have a file that is a higher version than where it's going to be imported to, I can choose to override that file version and select the version I want to save it as. So let's say this was in version 21, but I am actually sending it out to somebody who has version 19. I could set this, and when I ran the scrubber, it would override the file version of my 21.12 and make it 19.12 instead. So when they import that, they can be successful with the same version to version import. So
Sue,
yes.
could you just show the role hierarchy? Because you explicitly put it in,
Oh, sure.
and I don't
Sure.
think it would be good just to see that.
Yep. You bet.
And then I don't see any questions, but if anyone has any questions that you think would be good for Sue to physically show us, go ahead and throw them in the questions area.
So I have my SCR here that brought in,
Mhm.
and I have those new ones that were created underneath that hierarchy.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay. So do we have questions?
I don't see
before
any. I don't see any right
Okay.
now. So let's go ahead and swap back, and I'll wrap
Okay.
up. And if we need to jump back and forth, we'll do that if need be.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sue. So Sue gave you a good overview of how the tool works. So we basically have scrubbing, which stops anything from coming in, remapping, which allows you to match what you're getting into something you've got and rename, essentially, including roll downs and whatnot. And then, of course, the bring in the new data, and you can control that as well. Okay, so that's, and at all the different layers. So we added a few new features in the last month as well, because there were a few clients requesting the OBS controller and some of the role controllers and as well. So this is an active tool we've been working on, and saving a lot of time for our clients using it. So I think what you'll find is it's pretty easy to use. You don't need to be a P6 expert to use it. We have folks that are essentially the job site coordinators that get the schedules who are able to do the scrubbing, usually predefined by one of the P6 users, and then they just do the modifications. They know the rules of engagement, so it works very well, and it disperses the load and who has to do all the work on the imports. So, or at least the scrubbing. The imports may or may not be done by the P6 folks, the super users, depending on your security and the way you've set it up. Highly configurable, as you saw, easy to use. If you just need a simple scrub, we've got that capability. If you just prefix or just block things completely. So, and then the whole point really is to make sure the system is staying clean so that your data and data that's being reported out, which is getting more and more common. People are exploring the corporate reporting into other tools like, as I mentioned earlier, Power BI, Tableau, Business Objects, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many of them. You want to make sure the data is clean, not only so that your schedule comes in correctly, but also so that your data stays accurate and your reporting stays accurate on the back end. Okay, so go ahead and throw any questions in if there are some that come up. If not, I'll go ahead and close out the webinar for today. So hopefully you saw something of interest. I mean, we've been in the business for 27 years, and we've got a lot of different tools. That really focus on trying to help make your life easier in P6. So this is just one of them. We've got our P6 loader to load Excel. We've got our taps and caps tools, which are updating tools. One is with barcode and one is a web app. We've got our P6 QA, which lets you critique schedules very, very quickly. And then our calculator tool, which lets you add a bunch of functionality into P6. Multi-currency, auto loop checkers, profit margins, productivity factors, all sorts of different things that we've added to P6. So if there are gaps in how you're using P6, please reach out because we likely have a tool already. And certainly join a webinar if any of those gaps exist. So, okay, we have one question that was sent through. Would you be able to provide a feature comparison to Xena? Probably. I don't know it off the top of my head, but yeah, more than likely. So we'll take that as an action item. I'm not 100% sure if Xena is being kept up to date. I'm not all that familiar with it. So certainly our tool is being kept up to date. We've added a lot of new features. So that's also something to keep in mind. But yeah, definitely we'll have to take that as an action item to follow up on. Let's see. Okay, one more question came through. It is recommended that we use it with P6 loader, or will it be just as good without the loader? You don't need to use them together. The tools have a little bit of overlap. We have a little bit of scrubbing functionality in loader, but it's much more simplistic. And Scrubber is much more full control. So you don't need to use them together, and they are not exactly the same. So you'd probably, depending on your needs, if the scrubbing functions in loader are not adequate, definitely take a look at the scrubbing in P6-Scrubber. Okay, so we'll stay on for another few minutes. We've got Sue's contact info. If you saw something of interest and you want to understand a bit more how it could work for your group, we also have Donna on the line with us. She's in the Philippines, so if you want to reach out to her, she can put her email in there as well. Direct connections are available with Oracle databases too. So the first part Sue is showing you is you could run it without connecting to any database. That is an option. But so we have Scrubber up in our cloud. If you bought a 5-pack and you just wanted to import, do cleanups in there without being connected to your database, you can be fully separate from a database if you wish. We have clients who have that. Or you could deploy it in our cloud or inside your own company or to an external cloud. Okay, it doesn't. We have clients who use it in the Oracle SaaS cloud, and it uses the web services and API components, so it's secure. We don't break any of the business logic, and we use that to connect. So you have a few different ways you can deploy the software, the system, okay, depending on your requirements. So the way that we sell it, it's by the scrub. So we have unlimited yearly scrubs down to the smallest purchase, which is a 5-pack of scrubs. So we've got a range depending on your requirements. So it's not by user, it's not by database, it's by the number of scrubs that you will consume in a given year. Or just you buy a pack and you use them up as you need to. Okay, so it's a pretty flexible approach, and the price ranges from at the top end, $100 a scrub down to less than, well, unlimited. It could be like $1 a scrub or whatnot. Okay, so we've got a very good range to make sure that you can fit into a solution that works for you. Okay, so we tried to make sure that even an independent consultant who's working with clients has the ability to use the system. Okay, so we owe one answer on the Xena, but I think we've addressed all the other questions. Oh, nope, sorry, I guess not. So there's one more. The question will be, is there a recording of this webinar? Yes, there will be a recording of the webinar as long as everything worked fine, and I think it should have. It should have. I didn't forget to turn on the recording this time. Okay, so I think we addressed all the questions. So we'll go ahead and stop the recording here. If anyone wants to stay on for another question, feel free to do that. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending, and reach out if there's anything you want to explore further. Thank you.